Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward made their NFL preseason debuts over the weekend, and they shined during them. We talk about that, the other wild preseason action, as well as some injuries already piling up for a lot of these teams throughout the league. All that and more on the next Peacock and Williamson coming up right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome into another edition of Peacock and Williamson. I, of course, am not Brian Peacock. I'm Kevin Oestreicher filling in for Mr. Brian Peacock here. With me, of course, it is Matt Williamson, former NFL scout. We are here, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thanks so much for tuning in today and making Peacock and Williamson a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. Are free and available on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we bring you daily NFL content here on Peacock and Williamson. Thanks to all the everydayers out there, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Matt, week one of the preseason, it came and it went. We had a lot of really solid action over the course of the weekend, A lot of things to be excited about throughout the league. I mean, look, all eyes were on these rookie quarterbacks to start here. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, they made some statements in these debuts they had. I was impressed.
Absolutely, and great for you to fill in. Yeah, BP needed a little break, get away, a little vacation, much needed. We can have a little Raven-Steeler banter.
Yeah.
You gotta love that. And big rivals, that's good stuff. I hosted the Steeler postgame show till like 1 a.m. Saturday night, but it is great to see teams playing against other teams as opposed to just, staring at these training camp practices, of course. And another thing I always forget about, but I love is, now that we're into the week and whatnot, I just leave NFL Network going all the time. And there's just, a game after game after game. Even if it's third stringers, it's like, maybe I'll just that 5th round pick I wanted to check out. There's just always something to get your eye on.
Yeah, you have your guys throughout the draft process. They might go somewhere else, and you're like, let me check in on how this guy is doing. How right or wrong was I through one NFL game, which of course is not enough time for anybody.
Total exaggeration.
Yeah, I know, seriously.
And I urge everyone, please. I mean, they are not game planning for one another.
No,
these teams prepare to come in and run their stuff, but don't show you too much. And so take it with some grain of salt. But it is great to see, and it's better than watching practice.
Yeah, it's a very vanilla game plan.
Yeah.
You're right. They're not going to throw their entire playbook at you in week one of the preseason. They're going to save that stuff for the regular season. So preseason overreactions, Matt, as much as we plead to people, don't do it. It always happens. It's unavoidable, I feel like.
It's inevitable, but the NFL is so good at it. The NFL just always has a carrot hanging out there for you. So there's always something to react to. It's good stuff.
And that's when you don't have football for that long. You want to hang on to anything you can, especially in that first week of the preseason. So,
and as you mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of it's negative. You start to lose players, and I mean, Rashawn Slater breaks my heart. Things like that.
It's awful, and the injuries. It's a big part of the preseason, a big part of getting practices going. And we're going to get to that a little more in the second part of the show, because truly there's already a laundry list of really good NFL players that are going to be missing for some time, whether it's a couple weeks, couple months, or even the season. But the quarterbacks are so intriguing to me, Matt. And let's start off with Shedeur Sanders, because I think that was the biggest storyline of the weekend. 14 of 23 for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I don't think that even tells the story, where he looked cool, calm, and confident. He was throwing balls into tight windows. He was on the move making these throws. It wasn't perfect, but I think with what you wanted to see from him, and with Cleveland's quarterback situation being the way it is right now, it's just a mess of, is it Flacco? Is it Sanders? What's Dylan Gabriel doing? Like, Kenny Pickett, they signed Tyler Huntley. It's a mess. I think that Sanders showed you why the talent is clearly there. He fell to the 5th round for reasons still beyond me. You have a talented player out there in Cleveland, and I'm glad that he got to showcase it against Carolina.
Yeah, I found it funny going into the game. not just because in the AFC North here we rip on the Browns, but
Yeah.
that he became the starter and everybody got excited, but really he became the starter by default in that two of the other guys had hamstring injuries and aren't playing, and they're picking up Tyler Huntley off waivers. So I kind of looked at it like, good for him. I'm excited to see him. Maybe he would have got the start anyway. I don't know that for sure. But it's pretty clear that if any of the 4, even 5 or 6, I guess if you include Watson and Huntley, current Browns quarterbacks can be the answer, it's this guy. And we can criticize, he was not a first-round pick talent-wise. Okay, but he probably should have been in the second round if he's a clean off-the-field prospect. Absolutely. And all those things. And like you said, he has good command. His accuracy is outstanding. Everything you read and hear out of Cleveland is, man, if I had to build my team against around one of these 4, I'm not saying he's going to be John Elway, but that's your best chance of hitting. So this is all really good news for the Browns. And they're still sitting there with 2 first-round picks, maybe early. I'm not going to say that Sanders is the answer. Who knows? But this is progress, and you're finally getting good reports about a Browns quarterback for the first time in 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, seems like a while.
Yeah,
they've had at least, and I think he brings excitement to the city. I mean, again, for them, with obviously Baker coming in, like that was exciting for Cleveland because it's like, all right, this is the number 1 pick. Obviously, talented. Look, they've had plenty of high up draft picks. I'm not saying that they haven't drafted well there, but it's like, the hype around him, I mean, I guess if it's a comparable, it's not exactly the same, but I mean, Johnny Manziel was like the guy coming out.
Sure.
Like, all of the hype was around Johnny Manziel, and that got the city excited. Obviously, it didn't work out in Cleveland for Johnny Manziel, but it's that type of fanfare and excitement that, it's like, man, this guy is so polarizing both on the field and just as a personality. And to have a guy like that on your team, like Cleveland has needed that. And they need it to work this time, but at least with the way the team is structured right now, and that we're not really expecting Cleveland to have a great year this year. That gives the fans something to look forward to, which I think is good.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe he's the starter for the majority of the year, looks really good, and you decide to stick with him, or even trade him for a 3rd-round pick, and you use the 1st overall pick on Arch Manning or whoever. But I mean, it just gives you another chip, and as you mentioned, some excitement and some optimism around a position that's lacked it for way too long.
Would your advice to Cleveland to be start Shedeur in week 1, or would you give it to Flacco? And then inevitably it feels like, Matt, they're going to end up starting him at some point this year. It just feels like that's how it's going to go. Would you just try to say, hey, we're going to develop you for the whole season? Or do you think it'd be beneficial for him to maybe like go sit behind Flacco for like a month and watch and kind of see how it goes?
I definitely want to see more. It's a little early for that answer, obviously,
Sure, yes.
But I would break all ties in Sanders' favor. I mean, I just don't know what starting Flacco for a month or 6 weeks really gets you, Yeah,
it's really, there's no ceiling on Flacco in terms of like what he means long-term to the team. It's not like he is 2012 Super Bowl run Ravens Joe Flacco anymore. So it's like, I don't think there's a lot of advantage to it, but it might be the direction Cleveland's leading, but hey, Sanders at least I think has a shot to do it. The shot to
he
win
has
that
a shot.
job.
That's all I want. Just give me a guy that has a shot,
Yeah. Don't write him off. That's what I
good first step. Very good first step.
I love it. And another good first step, Cam Ward, he struggled in his first drive. He went 0 for 2. And second drive, he goes 5 of 8 for 67 yards. He liked that Calvin Ridley connection, obviously a vet who I think he trusts as a security blanket. So, Brian Callahan was very happy with it. The 3 and out, he led a touchdown drive, feeling comfortable. For him, I think that at the end of the day for Cam Ward, what he brings to the table, the ceiling is there, and I think following up a rough first drive and then bouncing back and not letting that get in your head, it might not be significant to some, but to me, Matt, I think it's at least good that he can be in that mindset of like, hey, you know what? I can just go out there, play my game, be loose, and bounce back from that. What do you think of Cam Ward?
Yeah, dead on. I think his mentality has that starter's makeup where I'm confident. I know I'm going to struggle, but I know I'm going to come back, and my team has my back. I've got a decent supporting cast. You mentioned Ridley. Like, I'm targeting Ridley in every fantasy league. I mean, he's going like way too late because, I mean, he's going to get a lot of targets and is still a really good player. Now, I'm not saying the Titans are going to be a 500 team or pulling themselves out of the doldrums this year, but I've kind of thought from the start, and this game didn't slow my roll on it at all. I think they have their quarterback. And I'm not giving you a hard time for talking about Sanders over Ward, but I still think it's hilarious that one guy goes first overall, one guy goes in the 5th round, and that's all we could talk about right after the draft is Sanders instead of Ward. And he's a really good prospect. I'm psyched for Ward.
I know. And I just following the media trends, I guess I was doing there, because during the draft itself, it was, Cam Ward got picked number 1. He got his moment with Goodell, and then it was Sanders for the rest of the 3 days until he got drafted. I mean, that was the media cycle there. So I'm excited for both guys. Cam Ward, to me, feels like a guy that for a number 1 pick is being overlooked because he just hasn't really gotten a lot of attention. Like, the attention has not been there for him like it has been with Sanders. Obviously, we mentioned Sanders is polarizing, but Cam Ward's polarizing in his own way. Like, I think that he has a lot of tools and traits. Like, coming out of school, there's a reason he was a number 1 pick. He has that potential, the arm, like everything is there for him to be successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Titans fans and the organization should be super excited about this guy. Now, we're both AFC dudes, and you're one of the few that has the superstar quarterback, and my team isn't. And that's an uphill climb in this conference in a big way, and then specifically in our division to keep up with Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and Burrow. And I'm not saying Ward will, but it's just like the Sanders thing that maybe, just give me a chance. And that's very encouraging.
Yeah, all you need is a shot, and it's developmental as well. I mean, I always wonder, would Lamar have been successful with another organization? Would Josh Allen have been successful with another organization that didn't believe in their talents? The Bills built their offense around Josh Allen in his skill set. The Ravens built their offense around Lamar in his skill set. It's about, drafting the talent, but then also knowing what to do with that talent when you get it, developmental, like all of it really does play a huge factor, which is why you get to see these guys in the preseason and really see their talent on full display. But coming up, Matt and I will be talking more.
Real quick, I feel like Tennessee's doing that properly. Even if you overspend on Dan Moore, and at least you have a line that's respectable. I think that they're making his surroundings as comfortable as they possibly could be for a first overall pick.
Yeah. They're investing. That's all you can do. The money's being spent in places where it is important to spend it when you have a rookie quarterback. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do. But preseason action was not just limited to the Browns and the Titans and Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Coming up, Matt and I'll be diving into the other wild action, including probably the play of the weekend that Matt got to cover a little bit. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming away on Peacock and Williamson. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Peacock and Williamson are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And one of my favorite features, new guillotine leagues. They just dropped, and every week, the lowest scoring teams eliminated, and the last one standing wins. Whether you're all in on something new where you just like sticking the head-to-head leagues or jumping into public leagues, Yahoo has got you covered. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues, join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Back here on Peacock and Williamson, Kevin Ostreicher filling in for Brian Peacock alongside Mr. Matt Williamson. And Matt, I teased it at the end of the first segment, but man, Cam Little stealing the show against Pittsburgh in the preseason. 70-yard field goal. Doesn't even feel real that it happened. I mean, obviously, I do cover the Ravens, and Justin Tucker had his NFL record 66-yarder against Detroit. That obviously being in a dome, bounced off of the crossbar into 3 points and a win for the Ravens there. Cam Little just destroyed this football. And it's the preseason. What do you have to lose by sending a guy out there to try to kick out for 7? I mean, going through that, and I guess because I watched it and I was just like seeing it fly. I'm just like, no way, right? No way. It's actually, and then it just kept going and going and going. I couldn't believe it.
Me either. And for this game, road games, I go to the radio station, watch on TV, and they're focusing on the local feed on Tomlin and a couple of the Steelers that aren't dressed. And you can kind of see like they're almost annoyed. Like, can we just go to into the halftime and get the Gatorade and get this over with? And we're going to really go through this shenanigans. And then their eyes lit up like, whoa, oh, wow, oh, how about that? And like I had a bunch of buddies at the game that I talked to today, and they were like, it's a driver shot that just kept climbing and climbing and climbing and couldn't believe that this came off a dude's foot. So pretty crazy. I could talk about all the nuances of the Steelers-Jags game, and it's not all that exciting because the Steelers sat like 20 of their top dudes. Yeah. But Lawrence was out there. Hunter played both ways. That was also noteworthy. Brian Thomas played a series with Lawrence as well, and the Steelers played a pretty clean, efficient game. Pittsburgh people are happy, and nobody got hurt, so that's good. But the kick was crazy.
Yeah, and that really is, you mentioned it, and it's a curious conversation about just kind of how preseason has changed, Matt, over the last handful of seasons when it comes to playing starters. And some team, like we saw Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase out there. Like, it's not that no teams play their starters anymore, but it is different. I remember, when the 4 preseason games was still a thing, it was the starters would generally play like half of a quarter in the first game, a full quarter in the second game, a half in the third game. Then they wouldn't play at all in the fourth game. Do you think it's beneficial to kind of get some of the rust off of your guys, or do you think it's just better to be safe, not play them? I cover a team that does not play the starters. Lamar does not play in the preseason. So do you like the shift, or do you feel like it's still beneficial for guys to go out there and play for a little bit?
Well, to your original point, I do think every coach and every team is trying to figure out the best strategy with 3. Yeah. It used to be just a standard format. Week 3 is a dress rehearsal, blah, blah, blah. Everyone rev up to that. Week 4, you don't play anybody. Now, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth because keep it in the division. I was complimentary of the Bengals for finally playing Burrow, Chase, etc., because they've started the season so slow every year. So I'm at least change it up. I don't know that means you're going to go on an 8-game winning streak to start the season or not, but you've been so slow. Let's at least get some rust off of these guys. But talking to the other side of the mouth, I was complimentary of Tomlin Saturday night for resting everybody because I've watched camp and he's grinding them pretty hard. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers and Cam Hayward and TJ Watt become better players by going to Jacksonville and putting pads on either, So I really do think it's a team by team thing.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, John Harbaugh has been kind of non-committal about the starters playing or not playing in week 2. I just think because the Ravens also, last year they started 0-2 and they haven't been nearly as bad as, Zach Taylor's 1-9 in the first 2 weeks or something like that. Right. The season. It's horrendous. So the Bengals, yes, you definitely should play your guys a little bit, but it is interesting because again, the injuries are all over the place. Again, Matt, and this is football. Injuries happen.
I got to ask you a quick Ravens question, though, since I have your attention. Yeah. I know that he's not huge on playing Lamar or the big-time stars and the veterans, but you have to admit the Ravens care about winning preseason games more than most teams. Is that kind of a fine line in Baltimore? How do they do that?
Yeah, I think the big thing with the Ravens is their depth has been so good where they can just have line changes and their depth be better than other teams' depth. So
they draft well and they want to get those young guys in there. And
that's huge. Yeah. And for the Ravens, it's unfortunate they drafted 2 cornerbacks this season. They lost both of them for the season after the first. One of them tore up their knee, the other one's on IR now. They're dealing with other injuries too. I think every year is different, and particularly in Baltimore's case, in 2021. They rested their starters the first, or I think they did. I think they rested their starters the first 2 weeks. Regardless, they played week 3 against the Commanders in the preseason. They put their starters out there for literally one drive. It was one drive, and J.K. Dobbins tore his ACL on that drive. And
then everyone calls you an idiot for being,
and it's and that's what it is, right? It's like if it all goes right, it's like, okay, great, they were so smart. And then if it doesn't, it's like, oh, they were so dumb. Why'd they do that? It's like it's on a
it's kind of a no-win, right?
Yeah, it is. And then not to
if
mention,
you go 0-2 to start the season, nobody cares anyway. Or if you go 2-0, nobody cares.
And that's what happened with the Ravens last year. They went 0-2, and then they ended up pulling us together, and
really
they found their way. Yeah. They found their way into the playoffs and were the 3 seeds. So it worked for them. But preseason, it's always difficult because you never want to lose contributors in games that don't matter, but you do want to get, especially young guys, experience. And we've seen, you mentioned Rashawn Slater. That was devastating. That was obviously a practice injury, but, the Ravens, Isaiah Likely broke his foot in practice. He'll be out for a while. You can't avoid it. And there are actually a few major injuries to report from week 1 of the preseason. Ian Rappaport put this list together. Commanders offensive lineman Lucas Niang, he tore his ACL. Rondale Moore suffered a significant knee injury, and I feel so bad. He's been injured pretty much his whole career.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the end of the road.
Yeah, especially if it's as significant as it looked and felt.
Who's going to give him another chance now?
I'd hope he gets it somewhere, but I'm not sure at this point.
Not a very forgiving league.
No, not at all. And then Matt Hennison is out for the year with a torn Achilles. You have other guys going down all across the board. Obviously, Maurice Norris suffered a really scary injury in that Lions-Falcons game. And that, prayers to him. Obviously, that was extremely scary.
Sure.
And it's the nature of football where you can't avoid it. You try your best. You implement all the best training policies you can. But, in some way, shape, or form, it always comes back to bite you. Even Anthony Richardson, in that Ravens-Colts game, got walloped by David Ojabo on a play. And there's controversy about that in its own. I know we were talking about it a little bit, Matt, before we started recording, where Richardson did not slide the protection over. Essentially, David Ojabo, who's the Ravens edge rusher, got a free path to Anthony Richardson, just demolished him, and his pinky finger bent the wrong way. There are images. I don't recommend you look at the images, but there are images of Richardson's pinky. There's a lot of blame to go around in that situation. I'm actually curious to that specific point. We talked about it a little before, but do you think that that's more on the quarterback, or is it more on the offensive line for not taking the outside guy? Because usually that's how it happens. You want to take the outside guy and leave the guy to go up the middle if there is a guy.
I'll be honest, the more I studied it and the more I watched it, I think it's on Richardson just for not being aware. That's not a corner blitz. I mean, a lot of times, like, a corner is the quarterback's job. This is an edge rusher that you're counting on, try to get a big on a big. Now, what I don't know is I think it was the rookie out of Kansas State was the running back. Gibbons.
Yeah.
Giddens. I called him Gibbons, but it's Giddens. I think it was Giddens. And I wonder if he should have at least thrown a shoulder into him or chipped, because he ran right past him. But the thing with Richardson is he just needs to stay on the field so he can get better at doing these things. And then inevitably something always happens where he ends up not being able to stay on the field,
Yeah. It's tough for a guy like we know in Richardson's development, Matt, this is a point that I've made a lot just on different platforms, is that the way that people, or I guess teams, approach rookie quarterbacks now is not great for a lot of these guys' developments when they need development. Because if you're a high up pick like Richardson was, or, maybe Zach Wilson's another example of this, you are expected these days to jump right into action. That's what sells tickets. That's what fans want to see, especially on teams that are bad and looking for the next franchise savior. Richardson probably should have sat for longer than he did before he got in there. And, the Colts kind of dragged him around last year where it's like, okay, he's the starter, and then nope, you're getting benched for Flacco, and he's not going to and they said specifically that was going to be a long-term benching. Then he was back like 2 weeks later or something, and they just kept kind of tugging him in all the way around. So I think the way that,
but on the other hand, that worked well for Bryce Young last year.
Right.
Sat him down. He everyone's week to week. I mean, but the player always gets the blame. I mean, the Colts, when you draft Anthony Richardson, leading up to the draft, you have to have an extensive conversation of how are we going to bring this guy along that has hardly any experience, not just let's jerk him around, Yeah. So I'm a bit of an apologist, No,
and I get it. And I just think that with the way that we saw it in the past versus what it is now, I mean, for Richardson, it's a longer leash than some of these other guys have gotten. I mean, Zach Wilson got up out of there, and the Jets said, we don't want, this is not working. We want to go get another guy, goodbye.
Trey Lance.
Yeah, all these guys are getting very short amounts of time. And if it doesn't work in that time, teams are saying, all right, we're just moving on to the next guy. Like Josh Rosen was an example of that, when obviously that was a new coach coming in, and, they said Rosen was their guy. And then guess what? He wasn't the whole time. And we all knew that. But, those are situations where guys, we talked about it with Lamar and Josh Allen, you might have all the talent in the world. If you're put in a bad situation, that team's not going to be able to maximize your talent the way that it should. And so for guys like Chase Daniel and others, former players were arguing with just other people about the Richardson play. they were talking about like that's a day one install for Anthony Richardson that he clearly is still not aware of. And this is not his rookie season. He has experience, a lot of it now. Yeah. So it's difficult all the way around. Man.
Yeah. It probably won't end well for the Colts.
Yeah. And again, when your quarterback competition battle is Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones, and the Colts also have been hit very hard by injuries. Apparently Kenny Moore went down with an injury in practice on Sunday. They lost Justin Wally in that Baltimore game, was their 3rd round rookie. They're already dealing with a lot of injuries, as a lot of teams are, but again, that's just the nature of the beast in the NFL. But we have a lot more to dive into. Yeah, it's a lot more injuries, and of course we'll have a lot of that. But coming up in the final part of the show, James Cook, a new chapter in his saga has been added, because apparently people thought he was going to play in the preseason. He warmed up and everything, but then nothing ended up happening. Stay tuned. We got a lot coming up on Peacock and Williamson. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And if you've ever wondered what your view will actually look like before you buy, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are absolutely no surprises. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. If you're worried about what happens if plans change, the Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back on Peacock and Williamson, Kevin Oestreicher filling in for Brian Peacock with Matt Williamson still. And Matt, James Cook wants a lot of money. You know, the reports and Instagram stories and the whole 9 yards, he's looking for right around $15 million, which is a lot of money for any running back. Yeah. You look at where the running back contracts are right now, that would put him right alongside Derrick Henry in terms of average annual value, which is Derrick Henry's a pretty good covering Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's a pretty good running back. That would put him tied for 3rd with Henry. Only Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley would make more annually if that was the number that he would end up getting. Now, we know that Kyren Williams just signed an extension, and I know you made that point before he hopped on here, and that's a really good one, because if you're in that
jumping
wheelhouse,
off point, at least, right?
It's like a wheelhouse jumping off point. That's a really good way to put it. Where if you are, I don't want to like of similar talent to a guy, or you're in that similar range to a guy, the way that contracts work nowadays for all positions is you're going to want $1 or $2 million more than that guy, or just a little bit more baseline money. So do you feel like James Cook is worth $15 million a year? Or do you feel like he should he drop that asking price down? I think it's going to be resolved by week 1. I mean, at least you'd hope so. The Bills need him for that Baltimore game. I just don't know when this thing ends.
So his brother, older brother, everyone knows, had a kind of history of asking too much as well. So maybe this is just the family and the advice they get. This is a really hard one for me, though. If this was a mediocre team, like if this was the Jets or Dolphins in that division, I'd be like, James, we're not in the same neighborhood. But I'm so close as the Bills that I might be like, all right, I'm going to bend a little bit here just to get me one more playmaker who's coming off a really good year. Now, Ty Johnson's not good enough to change your opinion on this, but Bills fans and Bills people will tell you they adore this guy. You know, he's great in protection. He's great on 3rd downs. And I'm a Ray Davis fan too. I mean, you could have a very cheap backfield and maybe have 80% of the production or 85. And, you know, Allen's going to run and raise all ships anyway. So I have a tough one with this, because most teams, if it was James Cook going to them with these demands, I'd be like, sorry, man, you got to pound salt. You know, we'll talk trade. I'll find somebody else. I'll draft someone in the 2nd round next year. But if it's close to being the difference of getting out of the AFC or winning in Kansas City or beating the Ravens in the AFC Championship game, well, then maybe you convince me to overspend a little bit.
And we know he's a good player, you know.
Yeah, he is.
Burst onto the scene and has done a really good job. And the thing that happened with the preseason game is that Cook warmed up But the agreement that they had was that he would warm up but not play. But, everybody sees him in uniform warming up, and they're like, oh, wait, did something happen? Is he going to play in this game? But it really was just a bunch of, the Bills wanted him to play. They wanted him to participate and kind of go along those lines. But Cook clearly is dug in here. He's the reports are he's standing on business, as people say. Like, it is what it is.
Easy to say until you start missing checks in week 1. So.
Yeah, and then those game checks, it starts to hit a little bit different. You might say, okay, maybe we're not gonna do this here. But the Bills' offense without James Cook is a worse unit, and they're relying they're relying on a lot of guys this year. That it worked well for them last season. Obviously, moving off of Stephon Diggs and kind of going with by committee approach at wide receiver, where it wasn't like just the one star. It was, all right, you had Matt Collins contributing. Keon Coleman was in that room, like Khalil Shakir. But Shakir might not even play in week 1 because he got injured. He has a high ankle sprain. Yeah. So if you don't have James Cook or Khalil Shakir against a very good Baltimore defense, and, that lingers for a little bit for Shakir, I agree with you, Matt, where it's like I'd pony up a little extra just to make sure I have my guys.
Might bend my rules a little bit for this instance, just because we're so close and we've been so close.
Yeah, and honestly, this might be a little like outside the box thinking from me, but I honestly think the Bills saved a lot of money with extending Josh Allen when they did.
Oh, man.
So when you talk about like in covering the Ravens, Lamar being up for an extension and his cap hit's going to be $70 million, the Ravens have to get something done. The new threshold for Lamar is Josh Allen. If Lamar had signed before Josh Allen, the new threshold for Josh would have been Lamar. That's just, again, how it works with those quarterback contracts. So I think that maybe you take a little more of that money that you saved from Josh. And I say, saving after signing a guy to a $300+ million contract is
worth more than
say,
that.
But
yeah.
It absolutely is true. But you take like the Cowboys for an example, or the Bengals for an example, teams that had the ability to sign their guys but didn't. And then a contract. The Bills were lucky Kyren Williams' contract was not more than it was, because if it was, James Cook would have said that it's only $11 million for Kyren here. And I say only, but he could have said if it was $13 million, he said, this is what Kyren got. I think I'm better than Kyren. 15 is still that number I want. Now I have proof. Now you got to pay me it because this is the threshold. So I think the Bills got lucky there. But the Cowboys and Bengals had opportunities to pay Jamar Chase, to pay Joe Burrow, to pay CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. Parsons. Yeah, and Parsons is another one where they haven't taken it. And Jake Lisco at Locked On Bengals said this a while ago, where you save $1 million today to lose $5 million tomorrow, because that's just how it works.
Inflation. Yeah, just do it now. Get ahead of it. Yeah,
it needs to be something where, Buffalo's not misguided in terms of trying to work on something with him and trying to bring a number down. Like, I get it, but it just gets to a point in the offseason where you start to get a little bit dicey. It starts to get a little bit, is it going to happen or not? So I still think by the time week 1 it ends. Do you feel that way?
I think when it's all said and done, I mean, how I would handle if I was Buffalo is, here's the Kyren Williams contract. Or do you want it? And if they come back and say, give me 10% more, all right, we got a deal. If it gets contentious, I still think deep down you're going to be there week 1 and maybe you'll cause a fuss, but oh well, you're not going to miss game checks. By NFL standards, he hasn't made a ton of money. He's still coming off his rookie deal. It wasn't a first-round pick. I know he's not hurting for money, but it's not like he's got tens and millions in the bank either.
Yeah, there was no 5th-year option, none of that for him. So
right.
I understand where both sides are coming from. I don't think
I
any
do
side
too.
is.
I do too.
I don't think any side is misguided. Is Cook's price tag a little high? Yes, but I understand why he wants it.
And it's a little sticky for the Bills, just considering where they're at as an organization right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of competitive teams in the AFC and the NFL, you got to keep up. And any little advantage you can get, if you have to give a little more money to get that advantage, I think it's well worth the money that is spent. But that's all we have for you today on Peacock and Williamson. Man. Appreciate this was great, Matt. I appreciate you helping me fill in for Brian.
That was a blast.
Big shoes to fill, and I'm excited to get back at it next time. So, of course, if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Or if you're an audio listener, be sure to follow along and subscribe in audio form. And also, on the way out, be sure to make your second listen Locked On Bets. And you can dive into that with betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers. They have daily locks and can't miss football futures as well. So find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Matt, this was awesome, man. I appreciate you. And we will see you back here next time. on Peacock and Williamson.